So China is clearly fueling a war. The question is, can they afford to? And I don't mean this metaphorically, I mean it literally. You see, wars are not just fought for oil, they're fought with oil. You need fuel for your jets, for your aircraft carriers, for your tanks. And that could be a problem for China. First, some basic facts. China is the second largest oil consumer in the world. The US is the first. But unlike the US, China is not energy independent. They make up 13% of global consumption, but only 1.5% of the total reserves. The result is this: China imports a lot. Almost 72% of their oil is bought from abroad. How much is that? More than 11.8 million barrels per day. And remember, this is during peacetime. China last fought a war in 1979 against Vietnam. If another war breaks out, the oil demand will increase. China's 1.4 billion people will need oil, their warships will need oil, their factories will need oil. The question is, where will this oil come from? These are China's top sources of crude. Saudi Arabia 17%, Russia 15%, Iraq 10%, Oman almost 9%, Angola 7% and Kuwait 6%. These are the top 6 sellers. Now, if you look at West Asia, it makes up almost 50.4% of China's imports. Another 6% comes from the US and its Western allies. And now for the most important question: how does this oil reach China? The Russian oil is mostly transported through a pipeline in Siberia, but what about the rest? Almost 60% of China's oil imports are waterborne. They're shipped via sea. And that means going through 3 important choke points. Let me show you on the map. One is the Strait of Hormuz. It is located between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Almost 21 million barrels pass through this strait every day. The second choke point is this one, the Strait of Malacca. It separates Malaysia and the Indonesian island of Sumatra. If you want to go from West Asia to China, this is the shortest route. Almost 80% of China's seaborne oil passes through here. Cut that off and Beijing will struggle. In fact, China's leaders have accepted this strategic challenge. In 2003, former President Hu Jintao called it the Malacca Dilemma. And now the final choke point, the Singapore Strait. It is just 19 kilometers long and it links the Strait of Malacca to the South China Sea. Without that, ships have to take the long way around. Now, what is common about these 3 waterways? For starters, China does not control any of them. But guess who does? The United States Navy. The US 5th Fleet is stationed in this region. It covers almost 2.5 million square miles of water. That includes the Arabian Gulf, the Red Sea, the Gulf of Oman and parts of the Indian Ocean. They have also stationed soldiers in this region. Around 10 military bases in Saudi Arabia, another 10 in Kuwait. Compare that to China. They have 0 military bases in West Asia. The closest one they have is the PLA outpost in Djibouti. Same in the South China Sea. Beijing has territorial disputes with nearly all of Southeast Asia. At the same time, the US keeps patrolling these waters. They're still the dominant Pacific power. So Washington could leverage these choke points. If you cut them off, you cut off China's oil supply. No fuel for jets, no fuel for armored vehicles, and no fuel for warships. It could effectively ground China's war machine. And such blockades have been done before. I can give you at least 2 examples. In World War I, Britain blockaded Germany and Austria-Hungary. The idea was to starve them into submission. In World War II, it was Germany's chance. German U-boats were used to blockade the Atlantic. US war supplies to Britain were gradually choked. So the strategy itself is not new. It has been employed before and with success. Now, from the looks of it, China is the perfect candidate. Is there any way to beat this blockade then? One option is to break through it. Use the PLA Navy to engage with the US military. But that could be a risky operation. After all, Chinese warships are still untested. They're still technologically behind their US peers. So a shooting contest is not in China's interest. The second option is to sidestep the sea. Enter the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. China has been trying to build land links from West Asia to China. The mission was going well until the virus from Wuhan hit it. And since then, it has lost momentum. Where does that leave the Chinese? They could use up their strategic oil reserves, They could also import more from Russia, but how long will that last? Can you really replace 60% of your oil imports overnight? Chances are you can't. Seamless supply lines are key to every war. If it's oil, it's even more crucial. Does that mean it's game over for China? Well, don't forget one thing. This is war we're talking about. There is no saying how things will play out. A lot of factors will decide whether China loses its oil supply. Chief among them is American resolve. How far is the US prepared to go? How much is Joe Biden willing to stake? Because remember, a blockade won't just affect China, it could also affect US allies in the region, countries like Japan and South Korea. If Joe Biden sees Taiwan as another Ukraine, do not expect very much. At best, he'll send weapons, maybe a few warship patrols, but that's it. But if he sees Taiwan as a key strategic interest, the blockade may happen. China's Malacca dilemma could become the Malacca nightmare. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.